It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Bill Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome into Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network, Thursday night edition from downtown Columbia, the capital city. Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, Professor Tom Hayes, and Brian Leonard. 800-956-7266 is the phone number. Email talkback@sportstalksc.com and on Twitter @SportsTalkSC. Lots to do tonight. The coach and the quarterback coming up at the bottom of the hour. Looking forward to having Steve Tannehill and Chuck Reedy with us. Mike Morgan on the move, plus more on the upcoming football games, USC, Florida, Clemson, and Boston College. Couple of things right off the top of the show. Get off of Will Muschamp and Josh Kendall's backs, please. You idiots. I'm serious. I was at the press conference. 100% of you commenting on what was said were not there.
I commented on it, but
I was there.
Yeah.
And Josh Kendall did not ask anything out of the norm. He actually asked a lighthearted question because not only is he a beat writer, but he's a feature writer. And writers, when they're putting their stories together, oftentimes will string together consecutive questions to use in their stories.
It probably was his only hope of getting anything in the paper on Election Day, to be brutally honest.
So imagine that, a reporter actually asking questions towards something that he wants to write. So he was going to write a story with the angle related to Election Day, and he wanted Muschamp's feedback. Muschamp and Kendall they have what appears to be a very good relationship. And, you know, Will plays along and Josh plays along, whatever the case may be. And as we touched on this the other night, you know, football coaches like you to believe that they've got their heads buried in the sand, and their only concern is the next football game. We know that's not the case. I mean, like I mentioned with Charlie Pell, you can dig up audio on Dabo Sweeney saying some of the same things about not knowing Election Day was taking place. I mean, they do that. That's what they do. So let's get off of the backs of both. Josh had nothing other intended than writing a story related to Muschamp and the players and the Election Day going on, and that is that. It just drives me nuts when I see, especially national pundits now who sit far, far away, but via social media love to take shots at something they don't know anything about.
Like you mentioned, we talked on this yesterday, and it's a lot of it is people who don't know Will Muschamp from Adam. You and I probably know him a lot better than some of the people who are commenting. We don't know him as well as some of the other beat writers do, but, you know, just from the standpoint of the fact that it was a fair question, and I would also say it's a fair response, just because of the fact that, you know, Will Muschamp wants to keep the attention on the football. He doesn't owe you in response about what he does with his players behind closed doors. And the one thing that I said to that, if you think that Will Muschamp doesn't care about his players, then why did he hire Marcus Lattimore? I can't think of anybody who is more in tune with what players need to have in their quote-unquote toolbox of life than Marcus Lattimore would be with those 85 scholarship players and the walk-ons on that team.
See, what gets me is how these talking heads, and I don't know, I don't watch the ESPN shows because they're just stupid. I can only react to what I've seen on Twitter here a little bit from some people. But, I mean, you draw a conclusion about an individual based on this. And they're so quick to want to, in this case, crucify Will Muschamp. Well, here's a guy that only cares about football. He doesn't care about the whole man. He doesn't care about his players knowing anything about civics and the right to vote and the need to vote and blah, blah, blah. I mean, first of all, these are men, okay? They're 18. They're voting age. They know what is going on in the world. And if they choose to vote, so be it. They don't need a head coach lecturing them or explaining to them about the voting process. That should have been done, A, by their parents, and B, by their high school. You hope they've got a good enough high school education to get into college to know what voting day is all about.
I didn't need to be told to vote when I was 18.
But here's the deal. If I was a football coach, and you know you've been around me enough to know that I love politics.
Yes.
You know what I would say? Now, I haven't talked to him about it. You know why? Because you open the door of the other things and the other feature stories that's trying to straight. Wonder where he's leaning. Let's ask this question. So if you just shut the door on it quick, you don't get that ancillary crap about is he trying to tell the students who to vote for, that sort of thing. No. So you leave it alone.
And it is the same guy, again, like we said yesterday, the guy who said that Thanksgiving's not a day, it's a meal. Halloween is third down day. I don't care about the solar eclipse. He's not going to give you any particular inclination one way or the other at anything outside of football. Like I said yesterday, his job, number one, is to keep his team in the APR green, graduate players, and win, period.
One thing I've learned about Muschamp, he's not a cuddly interview.
No.
He's not a guy who wants to deal with softball questions and feel-good questions. He's X's and O's about football, about his program and promoting his program. He doesn't give long answers about things that aren't related to that. Occasionally, you can get him off topic like DJ Durkin and things of that nature, and he will get out of his comfort zone a little bit. But by and large, man, he's about X's and O's and trying to win the next football game. So that's that on Muschamp.
He'll break down a Spider 2-Wide banana for you for about 2.5
minutes.
He'll
so. Display a sense of humor sometimes at your expense.
And, well, yeah, we've all felt that, I guess, a time or two.
I have a couple times.
And then I had somebody call me tonight and say that they were listening last night and they want to jump in on Will Merritt's offer to the pastor of Payne.
Oh,
but they're willing to take it up to $10,000.
Whoa!
And giving the Gamecocks 17. And
really?
I said, well, first of all, you don't have $10,000. And he assured me that he does.
We're gonna hold it in a trust. We're gonna hold it in a trust. That's how that works.
We're gonna hold it in the Cornblue bank accounts where we're gonna hold it.
Yeah.
But anyway, my point is that there are people out there, and obviously Will Merritt started it, who believe once again that Clemson is just going to crush the Gamecocks in 2 weeks. Just crush them.
I mean,
so are we at a position once again here thinking that the Gamecocks have no chance?
Yes, I'm in that position.
Not even a puncher's chance? I mean,
correct.
Come on. They are a better team.
Dude.
Are they a better team than they were at this time last year?
They're a better team this time last year.
But they're not as healthy.
However, they're not as healthy. And Clemson has a trip possibly to the national championship on the line. South Carolina, if they played their best and Clemson played their best, Clemson would win. Clemson is not going to help South Carolina win that football game by stumbling right when they're at the precipice of the playoff.
Remember when, and I'm not trying to compare Louisville to South Carolina because I don't think that they're comparable, but when we were asking our guy from Louisville, Howie Lindsay, what it would take for Louisville to be competitive in that game, it would take a complete meltdown from Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it would be a complete meltdown from Clemson, but you would need the combination of South Carolina's best game and Clemson helping them in enough ways in order to make that game close. I don't see either of those things happening.
All right, a couple of other things. USC women pick up another big-time basketball commitment today. This is a shooting guard to go along with the point guard they got earlier in the week. We'll tell you about that in recruiting. Plus, the latest on what Quavaris Crouch is doing this weekend. USC has offered another defensive back prospect. More on all that coming up in recruiting. Our poll question on our website remains a couple of more days for you. Who wins Saturday in the Swamp? And thus far, of our nearly 700 votes that we have showing here, actually, we've had over 1,000 because Mr. Stupid deleted the poll initially early in the week. And so we had to start over. So we lost about 400 votes there counting. So anyway, 59% are saying Gamecocks, 41% are saying Gay Tours. Now, this is our question here is not including playing the spread. It's simply who wins up or down. And, you know, with situation at quarterback at Florida, if they don't let Felipe Franks all of a sudden find himself, then I think South Carolina's going to win because I know Florida can run the ball pretty well, but they've given up in their last 2 games, Florida, over 900 yards.
I want to see this defense become the aggressor again because you realize you don't have a lot in the secondary. I know they're playing a lot of soft zone to keep things in front of them. I want to see the aggressor. I want to see man coverage, 0 on the outside. I want to see people in Felipe Franks' face, and I want to see him. What do you like to say? The quarterback must go down. He must go down hard. Yes. That's what I want to see.
And Lou Holt says no quarterback can throw the ball well when he's in the supine position.
Well, the Gamecock defensive backs who we talked to this week talked about how they played man-to-man in the fourth quarter the other day, and it worked out well. Be right back.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Got a little bit of time. We'd like to hear from you. 800-956-7266. How will the injury to Trask affect the Gators and having to use Felipe Franks against the Gamecocks? Will the Gamecocks' depleted secondary be able to survive against Florida? That Clemson BC line, which opened the week at 17.5 corn, has climbed to 20 in most places, and there's even a couple of shops that you can get it at 20.5. What does Vegas know that we don't?
They're usually on the nose. Keep this in mind. This probably won't have any impact whatsoever. It's just something I looked up today.
The weather?
Clemson has played this year to an average temperature of 73 degrees in their first 9 games. Low temperature being 61 degrees. The weather for Boston on Saturday night, low of 34. Kickoffs at 8, so they'll be getting kind of close to that.
44, I think, at kickoff time.
Yeah. Clear. During the day, some rain and a lot of wind, gusts up to 35 being called in Boston for Saturday afternoon. So you're going to have some interesting weather up there. It's going to be cold, be the first true cold weather game. But, you know, like Sweeney likes to say, they like playing games in, of course, their December slate and then, their November slate and then into December when it gets cold. He feels like when it gets cold for them, that means they're into championship mode. But yeah, we'll see how the guys handle that, because it's so easy to run fast and catch those footballs when they're nice and soft and cushy. They come at you like a brick when they're frozen. We'll see how you do. I'm
curious to see how Boston College wants to attack Clemson's defense, or Clemson's offense rather, because I'm wondering which phase that they're going to try and take away, because we've seen some of the last couple of teams, obviously doing it unsuccessfully, try to take away one phase, whether it's they dare them to run or dare them to pass, and obviously they've proven that they can do both very, very effectively. I want to know how Boston College thinks they can beat Clemson. Can they beat them by trying to eliminate the run or by eliminate the pass, and then you see how you go from there?
Well, even when teams throw very well, you think that the first thing is to eliminate the run. All you want is to make sure they're one-dimensional. But the key to this is when I heard Steve Adazio, as we'll hear some tape, I guess you had from him, I think they're going to get physical with the receivers to throw the timing off. I think they're going to let the officials see how many times they're going to call either a pass interference or holding at the line of scrimmage.
Well, on the other side of that, Boston College, most of its receiving output is through the tight end. They do a lot of shifts. They do a lot of shifts, a lot of motions. And
what if Tommy Sweeney catches a winning touchdown pass to beat Dabo Sweeney?
It'll be it's different spelling.
But it's pronounced the same.
Dabo will adopt him.
Yeah, that's my son.
I'm just saying,
son.
It's a
he's no Will Sweeney. He's Tommy Sweeney.
It's a different scenario for the linebackers of Clemson. You're going to have to see those guys play in space. Isaiah Simmons is going to get probably his biggest test of the year on Tommy Sweeney with that.
Either way, Boston College has to be close in this contest in the fourth quarter. And the reason I say that is this. Clemson runs up the score so much on teams that their secondary, which is still in my mind a little bit green, won't get tested because they know now that the other team is one-dimensional. Either they're going to throw it or whatever. But if you put them in a scenario where both facets of the offense can be used late in a football game, they have not seen that yet, other than maybe we can talk about what Texas A&M.
And Syracuse.
Phone number 800-956-7266. Lines are open. First up, first in here on Sports Talk. Do you think Clemson rolls Boston College? Is this indeed going to be a test for the Tigers? And do the Gamecocks go down to Florida and pull off a mild upset? They are the underdog going into that one. At least you want to check and see if anything's changed now that we know that Trask is out, and that might affect the way Vegas is looking at this thing. Going back to Boston College and Clemson, you talk about the running game. Really only two teams have run the ball extremely well. Wake Forest rushed for nearly 300 yards against them, and NC State put 225 against them on the ground. Everybody else, Holy Cross had about 200 yards. So, they've been hot and cold against the run. You know, they held Purdue down to nothing on the ground. Of course, everybody holds Louisville down. Virginia Tech only rushed for 111 yards against them last time out. So they can stop you, but they can also have their issues against the run. You know, in trying to stop Clemson, they're so good right now in both ways. If you think you're going to put 6 or 7 in the box and just stop their running game, then they're just going to beat you with those receivers. They're going to throw deep on you. They're going to throw those slant patterns. And your receivers are going to catch it and take it for big yardage. You drop back and play a cushy zone, then they're going to give it to number 9 and let him do his thing, and he's going to have a big night against you.
Florida line is at 6 right now. The spread
it's down a little bit, right?
Didn't
open at 6.5?
Open at 6.5, 7 in some places. But yeah, I think the way that people are looking at this game is they believe that Florida can win an ugly game against South Carolina because they think that those offensive numbers greatly were inflated by the Ole Miss defense last week. I still believe that Florida's fraudulent. I still believe that they are more the team that we saw over the last 2 weeks against Georgia and Missouri than they are the team of the first 7 games, just because of the fact that I think that they weren't very much tested aside from their game against LSU.
You know, if South Carolina wins this game, you can say, this is hard to believe, but South Carolina will be dominating this series, this decade against Florida. This would be 6 out of 9.
Mm-hmm.
You put that together with their success against Tennessee this decade. And also, I mean, even though Georgia has won the most games of late, they've had a good decade against Georgia head-to-head this year. I mean, this decade. You know, Gamecock football, I know for the first 100 and something years, it lagged behind considerably. But since Spurrier came in, especially in his final 4 or 5 years, and got them on the winning track, except for the 1-year drop-off when he, of course, walked away and then before Muschamp got there, they've been downright competitive with everybody this decade. Now, I know Clemson has dominated them of late, but early in the decade, the Gamecocks dominated Clemson. So it's not like this decade has been a complete breakdown for the Gamecock football program.
It's part of the reason is because Steve Spurrier taught this university how to act, how to be, how to compete in the Southeastern Conference, how to recruit, how to present yourself, how to get fans to come to games, marketing, things of that nature. And Will Muschamp has kind of furthered that.
Mm-hmm.
You can almost say that he's taken the recruiting even to a higher level than even Spurrier has. Spurrier got a lot of players just based off of his name and his notoriety. Well, Muschamp has taken that and furthered it and put more resources into recruiting than they've ever had there before. And the other part of this too, Pro, is that from South Carolina's perspective, they don't have a ceiling. I think Clemson has a ceiling. Whether they're close to it or not, there is going to be a ceiling on what they can do.
Called the moon.
I don't know.
They've won a national championship in the last 3 years. They've played for 2 national titles.
I'm just saying, eventually you bounce off that ceiling.
Well, yeah, the key point is Spurrier added, I think, and to an extent at Alabama, Nick Saban does it too. Spurrier's a little bit more outwardly displayed, but he showed that you had to have charisma and a little bit of arrogance when you take the field. If you go on the field and hope you're going to win, you'll probably get your butts kicked. You got to go on the field thinking you're going to win. We got the plan, as Spurrier did sometimes in recruiting. Well, we missed one, but hey, we always tell them we either win with you or win without you. So, you know, that kind of attitude you almost have to have.
Well, there's no doubt in my mind that Muschamp is the right long-term solution for the Gamecocks. You just have to give him the time. I mean, I love listening to Muschamp and his ability, even when he was talking about Florida's lineup, he was talking about the quarterbacks, and he could tell you which high school their quarterbacks went to. This is how much he's into the recruiting game, which, let's face it, you've got to be into it in college. You're not going to be successful if you can't go out and compete for and occasionally get some of the top line players. So unlike Spurrier, who had to look at a sheet to tell you who he signed on signing day, Muschamp needs none of that. So my point is, he is so totally engrossed in the building of this program. He's going to get it done. He's going to get it done in a big way. You just got to give them some time to do it. Back in a moment.
I do want to read this tweet to us before we get to the coach and the QB saying they disagree. They said, my 18-year-old voted for the first time Tuesday. Didn't need my advice on who to vote for, but did need advice in the process, and he's a National Honor Society member. I would hope that Will Muschamp had talked to players about the football about the process of voting, because first-time voters would have definitely benefited from the advice about the process, and no, they wouldn't likely ask mom. What was the way you put it? They've got plenty of people in that program who tell them how to do things as simple as brushing their teeth and flossing.
Absolutely. They're advised on everything. Don't worry about that. Let's ask Chuck Reedy and Steve Tannehill. They've been through it as player and coach. We welcome in the coach and the quarterback here on this Thursday night edition of Sports Talk, Chuck Reedy and Steve Tannehill. So first of all, great to have the both of you with us once again. Coach Reedy, so, as a head coach, you get your head buried in the sand because you're focused on the game ahead and everything about your program, preparing your team. Election day comes up, and, some coaches want to act like they don't know Election day is here because they're busy taking care of their football team. And we know otherwise. And I've heard various coaches handle those kind of questions in different ways. But, I mean, as a head coach, how much do you get involved with your players when it comes to, say, Election day and making sure that they have the opportunity to go take care of business?
Well, you make sure they have the opportunity. But, I personally never got involved in any of that. I mean, like I said, we made made the opportunity available for them. And even in high school, I mean, as you speak, I mean, we had guys that were 18 that could vote. So it was an issue, not an issue, but it was something that, certainly we dealt with even in high school. But personally, I never got involved in it other than giving them the opportunity to vote.
Yeah, Steve, as a player at South Carolina, whenever this time of year rolled around, I mean, with Brad Scott, I guess primarily, how did they deal with Election day and advising players on getting out to vote and things like that?
Well, you got a lot of issues with that because you got a lot of guys that aren't from the state, and so if they don't have absentee and aren't registered or whatnot, so we were told about voting and have the opportunity, but I'm gonna say when I was in college, I didn't vote, for anything in South Carolina. I was still, my home was in Pennsylvania, so it's a tricky situation. I think what Coach Muschamp said was great. I thought it was funny. I think he was picking, but a lot of the guys, again, they're not from the state, so. And the guys that are, do they have time to pay attention on who's rooting for what and who's voting for, they had the opportunity. Carolina practices in the morning, so I understand the fellows have plenty of time to go vote if they choose.
Chuck, how about coaches who like to put on that front of, listen, I'm so busy with football. I told the story of back in the 70s when my boss went up and interviewed Charlie Pell, and in the midst of the interview in mid-October, he asked him about the World Series, and Charlie Pell deadpanned, what's the World Series? And I mean, we all know coaches know all this stuff's going on, but what about putting on that kind of facade?
Well, you didn't work with Charlie Pell. I did. He's probably being serious.
Okay.
Charlie Pell was the most intense individual, the most intense football coach that I've ever been around. And, now I was a young coach and only worked with him 1 year, but I literally went into work every day, scared to death in a meeting that he might call on me because he was tough now. But anyway, having said all of that, the one you probably referred to mostly is Saban. According to Saban, the only thing he watches is the weather report every morning, and other than that, he doesn't know what's going on. Well, I don't know if that's true or not, but I wouldn't argue with what the guy's done. I mean, whatever it is he's doing, it's working pretty good. So, but there are a lot of coaches that try to put on that, put out that idea, that they don't know anything other than what's going on with football. And that's probably quite a bit overrated, I would say.
To the field, gentlemen, coaching the QB, Chuck Reedy, Steve Tannehill with us here on Sports Talk. Steve, the Gamecocks put forth an offensive onslaught on Ole Miss last week. Basically, absent-minded defense be darned. Does South Carolina have what it takes to go down to Florida and pull the upset on a Gator squad in Gainesville?
I think we do. I think it was a big win last week, especially how the fourth quarter went. We had 120 or so yards on offense, and I think we gave them 12 or something. What was it, like 3 and outs, and then the last drive where they went for it on fourth down and didn't get it. I think that's right. But what a giant win on the road. And the one thing that concerns me is we lost the two safeties, and they got a lot of guys banged up. So Florida's a super tough place to play, but they're coming off a loss, and I think our team took a big step forward, and I was happy to see some offense. We also had a kickoff return to get the thing started, and then what an unbelievable catch. Reminded me so much of Alshon's catch by Ryan Edwards. But I heard Coach Muschamp say Jake played the best game, and I thought the offense as a whole really, really stepped up. And we talked about it last week. We didn't want it to be a shootout, and it kind of ended up being one. And they found a way to win. And I've been saying this, Coach Muschamp's teams, we seem to win all these close games. That's a good sign.
Yeah. And Steve, they mentioned this week Shi Smith, getting him prepped to play a little corner because of their need in the secondary. Of course, we know what he can do at wide receiver, but you had him at Union County. And what kind of defensive back was he for you?
Well, when we went his junior year, we made a run and ended up losing an upper state championship to South Point. But we played some games in the playoffs where we used him in our nickel package, and he's such an unbelievable athlete and tough guy that they can use him. And Coach Muschamp said it about 4 weeks ago. He said you can put Shi Smith anywhere, and he's going to be a great player. So I can see them, maybe if they had to, using him in some situations because his athletic ability is off the chart, and he's physical. So you hope they wouldn't have to use him. But I know Shi, and he's definitely going to accept the challenge if it's given to him.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck, everybody talks about the shootout, but any good shootout, if you're going to win it, you still got to run that football. But from a mental standpoint, not talking about the so-called skill players, but when you go to your offensive line and tell them, we're going to run the football and I want people knocked off the ball, what mentally and physically does that do as far as just getting the juices flowing for your offensive line?
Well, that's what those guys, that's what they love to hear. And so, I think, when you tell them, hey, we're going to put the game, in your hands, and, we're going to run the football, and, it's up to you guys to, to come off the football and hit people and what have you. And, what they did, they ran the ball 37 times through at 32, which is, it's probably a pretty good mixture. And they had a bunch of big plays, which they haven't had earlier. There's a real strong correlation between being able to run the football and getting big plays in the passing game. And when you can run it and at least establish some kind of running game and make the defense, involve, a safety, an extra guy trying to stop the run game, there you open up the opportunities to have big plays in the throwing game. And I think that's what happened the other day. And if they can continue to have the same kind of balance, and they're going to have to continue to do that if they're going to have any success against Florida and on down the line, I think that they're headed in the right direction. They've got guys that can make plays. They've had opportunities early in the year and they didn't make them, but they made them the other day.
All right, hang on. We're going to come back, let you finish, and talk about Clemson right after the break.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, as we continue with the coach and the QB, Chuck Reedy and Steve Tannehill, hanging on with us for another couple of minutes. Feel like we should transition to the game in Chestnut Hill.
Yeah, I just want to give Chuck the Paul Johnson update. 2 passes in the last game. 2 passes.
And they won again.
And they won again. 2 passes.
Dude's saving his job, man.
Need to say no more.
Georgia Tech, man, they're always going to be like 7 and 8 wins. If he can beat Georgia at the end of the year, which he probably can't. But
no.
All right, let's talk about Clemson and BC, Chuck. And weather's going to be a little bit chilly, 34 degrees or so during that ball game. Does that affect an offense like Clemson's that loosey-goosey, nimble athletes, soft hands, hard football now? You think that changes anything?
I don't think so. I mean, I think Clemson is. I mean, they're so good across the board. It may bother them a little bit early on. They're going to get warmed up, and it won't bother them at all. No, this is. I'll say, like we've been saying, I think Clemson will win by, 20, 30 points. I mean, they're just so much better than anybody else in this league. Boston College, they're benefiting just like NC State is from the fact that the whole conference is so weak.
Mm-hmm.
They're ranked, but they're.
Do you agree with 4 ACC teams in the college football? 4 ACC teams are in the CFP ranking.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. They're all, other than Clemson, they're all benefiting from the fact that the league is so bad that they all have good records. I mean, but BC was beat convincingly by Purdue. So I mean, that's the only decent team that they've played outside of the league. NC State hadn't played anybody outside of the league. Syracuse, I mean, you can go right down the line. I mean, there's just the quality in the league is so poor. And as I said before, I think that's the only thing that could possibly hurt Clemson. Is the fact that they just haven't had to play the kind of competition that Alabama has had to play.
Yeah.
And, after this past weekend, there's only two great football teams, I guess I would say, and that's Clemson and Alabama. I don't think there's anybody else in their league.
Chuck, how do you battle complacency? I know that Dabo tries to make every game the biggest game of the year, and that's his way of doing that. But, I mean, you played 4 consecutive walkover opponents, and even if you look at Vegas still thinks this is a 20-point line. I know that people are saying that Boston College can give them a game, and I believe that they can. But in your mind, does Clemson have to play down to Boston College for them to give them a game?
Well, yeah, they would. Clemson would have to play. They'd have to turn the ball over, which can happen. Or they'd have to go out and, all we got to do is look back to the last 2 years. I mean, against Syracuse and Pittsburgh the last 2 years, Clemson, they've shown that they can play down to an opponent. And, they did it this year against Syracuse, but they dodged that bullet. So it can happen. But, in this case, the motivation is real simple. They're playing a team, they're ranked 17th, even though, they're probably not that good of a team. And you're playing, this is for the championship. So, they've got a lot of things that can motivate the guys. And, and the other thing is, they've obviously got great senior leadership. And, those guys, they're on a mission. They know what their goal is. And, I'm sure that they'll be ready to play, on Saturday.
You mentioned that Pitt game and that loss. One thing that gave Clemson a ton of trouble in that game was the tight end. And, Tommy Sweeney is an excellent tight end at BC and somebody to watch. Now, Steve, we're at 2 weeks away from the Palmetto Bowl, and we've been debating it here already. Last night, Will Merritt put $1,000 down that Clemson would easily cover 17 points. I had a friend of mine tell me tonight he'd put 10 grand down on that. My question to you is, now I'm not asking you for your money. I know you got a ton of it. I don't want to ask you for any of it. But do you think the Gamecocks are gaining on the Tiger? Is this going to be a competitive game in 2 weeks?
Ooh, tough question.
Political.
Clemson has better players right now. and it's a home game, and they got some seniors that this will be it. A lot can happen in that game, but just based on, the X's and O's and who's where, they have a lot more talent than Carolina does. So, I wouldn't bet $1,000 on 17 points. I definitely wouldn't bet 10,000 on 17.
How many points would you need to put 1,000 down?
50.
I take 35.
35.
$1,000 bet.
That's funny.
But I just don't have that type of money, so I don't gamble like that. But I think we're making strides, and I think last week was another step in the right direction. We're not there yet, but we're headed there, and I think that especially how we played so up and down, in September. I think the last few weeks we've battled, and I'm happy with the way things have worked. I think this week is a giant game, and we win this, and you got a chance for 8-win season. That's another step in the right direction for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask Coach Chuck Reedy about this because you've coached in the state of Texas, and you know how rivalries are. But it seems to me fans always put pressure on the coaches who are not that other team. Gus Malzahn, I think he gets a lot of heat because he ain't Alabama, and fans here look at Muschamp. Well, we're not Clemson yet, and not satisfied with watching their teams make incremental increases in what they're trying to do as far as building a program is concerned.
Well, no, you're right, but it's always going to be that way. I mean, in South Carolina, you're always going to be compared. If you're a Carolina fan, you're always going to compare everything to Clemson and vice versa. And Steve hit the nail on the head. I mean, Clemson is at this point, it's just far superior talent-wise, and Carolina's getting better, and I think they got a really good chance to beat Florida. I mean, Florida played awful last week, and they were getting Kyle Trask ready to play, and then he breaks his foot. So they're right back to Felipe Franks, and and he's not proven that he can go out and and beat a really good football team. I don't think so. But Clemson. I mean, like I said earlier, Clemson and Alabama, in my opinion, are they're at a level above and beyond anybody else in the country right now. And I don't see anybody that can beat either one of them really.
The only other two, Coach Reedy, is Michigan. They beat Ohio State because Michigan's defense is really, really good, but on offense they're not that good. But Michigan's defense is up there in the class of Alabama, Clemson, close to it, don't you think?
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. But, you look at Alabama and Clemson. I mean, offensively, they've got great weapons. Both of them do. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. And defensively, both of them are really, really good. I mean, they're just so balanced. Both of them are on both sides of the ball. I mean, I just don't, and I haven't watched Michigan a lot, but, it's just hard for me to believe that they're, as balanced as both Clemson and Alabama.
I think against either of those teams, I think the speed that Alabama and Clemson possess would expose Michigan. Anybody agree with that?
Yep.
Expose them on offense. I think they got tremendous speed in the secondary.
Team that I'm worried about against Clemson would be a team that can score like they can. That's the only team that would worry me, and I think that's Alabama.
Who is that? Oklahoma?
Bama or Oklahoma.
Clemson will score 100 points on them. I mean,
Bama or Oklahoma.
Oklahoma can't stop anybody, huh?
It's true.
Got to be able to stop them some.
Yeah.
All right, guys, listen, we thank you. We appreciate you. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I didn't say that I didn't say there was a team that existed. I'm just saying that's a team that would worry me.
Mythical.
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 I just don't know if there is one. That's
Coach
the problem.
And the quarterback, they are great. Top of the hour, we'll be back.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Okay, we're back. It is Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. We had planned Mike Morgan for now. He is not available, so we will wish him well as he has a Kentucky game tomorrow, right?
He is taking in Kentucky versus SIU up arena tomorrow. So SIU, one of the more colorful coaches in the country when it comes to college basketball, Barry Hinson.
Well, the only way to trump Mike Morgan is to do recruiting. Plus, we're going to hear from Hunter Renfro, a failed candidate for the governorship of South Carolina, write-in candidate.
Yeah, petition candidate.
He got how many votes?
I think he got 5 or 6, according to Tim Beret.
I think Dabo got like 5 votes.
Yeah, something like that.
We'll hear from him. We'll hear from Brian Edwards as well. Also coming up in this hour of the program, we're going to be talking about a big event coming up 1 week from tonight, USC Clemson night up in Rock Hill. Big fundraiser, big event to build up the South Carolina-Clemson rivalry as if it needs any help. Be talking about that with Mike Taylor at the bottom of the hour. And the money coach, Fran Halloran, coming your way, so get your dollars and cents ready for that. In the meantime, give you the recruiting report for tonight. We begin with the news of another big commitment for the USC women's basketball team. 6 foot Bria Beal, Rock Island, Illinois, commits to USC this afternoon over Louisville, Duke, Michigan, Illinois. ESPN ranks her 13th nationally, the number 3 wing. She's the second top 15 commit for Dawn Staley this week. Earlier, 5'9", Zia Cook of Toledo committed to the Gamecocks. All I got to say about that is holy Toledo. And another top target for the USC women, 6'3", Letitia Amahir of Ontario, announces Wednesday at 6. USC, Kentucky, and Louisville are the finalists. Imagine if they get her as well. She, too, is a top 15, top 10 kid.
Jolette Law, the assistant who had been at Tennessee from Florence, South Carolina, but played in the Big Ten at Iowa and coached in the Big Ten at Illinois. She's showing that she still has recruiting prowess in the Big Ten country.
To football, USC offered 2019 defensive back receiver Zay Flowers, 5'11", 160, Fort Lauderdale, once was committed to Nebraska. He has taken an official to Kansas State. He also reports offers from Boston College, NC State, Wake Forest, Pitt, Kentucky, and others. Running back Michael Dukes of First Baptist having another big year in the playoffs now. According to Max Prep's stats, he's rushed for 1,678 yards and 27 touchdowns. He's now over 4,100 rushing yards and 74 touchdowns in his career. He tells us Clemson is showing more interest in USC at this point with calls and messages from recruiter Tony Elliott. He gets messages from USC recruiter Bobby Bentley, but no phone calls. His only game visit this season has been to ECU, but he plans to be at Clemson for the USC game. He's also hearing now from Florida, Florida State, and Pitt. He won't decide on his officials until after the season. He's considering signing in December, and keep in mind he's also a basketball prospect as well, with an offer from IUPUI.
Indiana University, Purdue University of Indianapolis.
Ooey pooey.
According to Adam Friedman of Rivals, Clemson and USC target linebacker Quavaris Crouch of Charlotte will take an official visit to Tennessee this weekend. Don't ask me why. He has taken officials to Florida State and Michigan and is scheduled for Clemson next weekend.
He wanted to go to Calhoun's.
Could be. That'd be a great place to take your recruits.
Oh, yeah. Right there on the water.
Take them out on a boat.
Yeah.
Now, Michigan people are talking like they're going to get this kid. Clemson insiders feel like he's theirs, so we shall see.
Of course they do. Nobody ever believes they're going to lose a recruit, Corn.
Well, I mean, the guys that cover Clemson football recruiting truly don't believe Clemson is ever going to miss on a person.
No kid, unless they're quote cooling
because
on him.
The brand is just too strong.
Unless they're cooling.
But
on
that's
him.
what they say. That's their opinion. That's how they feel.
Cooling on him.
2020 defensive lineman Xavier McIver, 6'3", 260, Shiraz, going to Duke Saturday. Blue Devils take on North Carolina. He has offers from USC, Wake Forest, Tulane, and South Florida. Clemson and Michigan are recruiting him as well, he says. and they figure to be among his favorites moving forward. He was at USC for the Georgia and Texas A&M games. The Gamecocks see him as a 3 technique who can help stop the run. Been talking to Lance Thompson and Eric Wolford, who's his area recruiter. At Clemson for the NC State game, he enjoyed that visit. Tigers have not yet offered, but they're showing serious interest. And he said he's talked to all their coaches, and including defensive tackles coach Todd Bates. They see him as a 3 technique as well. He's still in the formative stage of his recruiting, gathering information and waiting more offers. In-state schools are in good shape. He did say Clemson would have the edge, but he is waiting on them to offer, but he likes South Carolina too. And at baseball, we mentioned this last night. I'll give you more information. Left-hander Luke Little, 6'8", 220. You say San Jacinto.
San Jacinto.
But see, I'm taught in Spanish the J is
nobody
more
in
of a
Houston.
H.
Nobody in Houston says San Jacinto. It's San Jacinto.
Luke Little of San Jacinto. I'm not in Houston.
It's where the college is.
Yeah, I know that. But I took 2 years of Spanish. I know my Spanish.
I took 6.
That's why.
I'm sure you did.
That's why if you're in the.
I'm sure you were born in
that's
Mexico.
Why if you're in Nevada, you say Nevada. You better not say Nevada.
Did you come across illegal? Calling Trump. Left-hander Luke Little of San Jacinto Junior College, committed to USC. He's a native of Matthews, North Carolina. Get that one right?
Yes.
Now, according to stats compiled by Max Preps, last season in high school, he batted .462, 2 homers, and 22 RBIs. And on the mound, 5-3 with a 1.14 ERA, 91 strikeouts, and 35 walks in 49 innings. Opponents batted 110 against him. I wouldn't want to stand in. A left-hander, 6'8", 220, who can throw in the 90s.
Big unit.
I wouldn't stand in there against him. There you go with recruiting here on Sports Talk. We remind you to check it out on our website all the time, SportsTalkSC.com, and on Twitter, use the hashtag #STRecruiting.
Let's hear a little bit from Hunter Renfroe, who's getting ready to obviously play Boston College, and also was a semifinalist for the Burlsworth Award given to the nation's top player who started as a walk-on.
It's an incredible honor. I actually just found out about it about 30 minutes ago, and I was reading up on it. And it's a cool foundation. Does a lot for children that are kind of in need. So it's cool just to be just mentioned with the. I mean, Baker Mayfield was a walk-on last year, won the Heisman. So there's a lot of good players. I mean, in college football that started as a walk-on, and it's just special. There's something that I've always taken with me. Coming to practice every day, just knowing that I'm a walk-on, and so to be able to be recognized as one of the, I guess, finalists for that award is pretty special.
Will you ever hear from other guys that maybe dream to do what you did one day? And what kind of advice do you give guys like that when they approach you?
Yeah. I mean, social media, that sort of deal, or just working at camp and just talking to a guy, and a lot of high schoolers that want to know what it takes to kind of be a walk-on. And what I always tell them, it's kind of unique at Clemson. It's a special place, but I mean, anywhere you go, it's all about the little things. It's all about just having fun in the moment, having fun playing the game, and just to take that mentality of being a walk-on every day, whether it's in football. And that's something that I can kind of take with me the rest of my life. That came in kind of undervalued, kind of nobody knew who I was, and so that's going to kind of, whether it's in the next stage of life, starting a business or whatever it may be, just being able to take that and kind of having that chip on your shoulder.
Boston College was a fourth quarter game for y'all. Mm-hmm. What makes them so difficult and have them make the plays so difficult?
We went back and watched that game earlier today, actually, but they're tough. They're physical. They're not going to be out of the gaps. I mean, they're going to be where they're supposed to be. If they're supposed to drop to a depth of 12 yards, they're going to be there. And so just the discipline that they play with, the toughness, the mental edge they play with, believing in what they do is a big part of it. It's a lot like our team. So we're going to have to play well and have a great week of practice to be able to beat them.
That is Hunter Renfroe, who speaks, of course, about the Clemson Tiger football team getting ready for Boston College, and also about that award that was won previously by Baker Mayfield and also Mr. Falk.
People around Chestnut Hill, man, they are pumped about this game. There's pictures of the camera, the hanging camera over the field being installed at Alumni Field. They've got all kind of promotions going on.
They're not used to this. This is a big game.
It's a sellout. Unfortunately, 95% of that city has no clue what's going on over there at Chestnut Hill. Back in a moment.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
It is Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Couple of updates from Will Muschamp's Coaches Show going on presently on many of these South Carolina Radio Network affiliates, but we'll tell you, since we are still on the air, about some of the updates. Muschamp does hope to get safety JT EBay back next week. He's been dealing with a knee injury, but Nick Harvey is still in concussion protocol. The two offensive linemen that were hurt in the one of them was hurt in the game, and one of them did not make the trip to Ole Miss. Malik Young and Dennis Daly are both ready to go. We presume that Daly will retain his starting spot at left tackle. Bryson Allen Williams is hopeful Muschamp says he does not like to do the word doubtful, so he says hopeful for Bryce and Allen Williams. Both running backs, Tyson Williams and A.J. Turner, will play. Rico Dowdle, though, has been limited in practice. They did get him back into practice on Wednesday, but he's been limited in action, so they are calling him questionable. Same goes for defensive end Aaron Sterling. And as far as the depth issue at safety, they're going to call on Rashad Fenton to play a little bit more safety as well. They can put guys like Israel Mukwamu in there, as well as J.C. Horn, and also Jonathan Gibson has been repping at safety this week. We also had told you about potential for Shi Smith to play safety. That seems like that is a more emergency situation if need be.
Well, Mukwamu and you put Horn in there together, they lack of experience, but boy, do they have length.
I
wish they could have had the kid out of kid from Southern Cal, Jamel Cook.
Would have helped. I'll be shocked if Dowdle is able to play. I mean, did you see how badly he sprained that ankle?
Bent back.
That thing was bent terribly. I was shocked he was able to come back to practice this week. Couple of quick notes. I was just I tweeted this out this afternoon. I noticed I was looking at Virginia Tech's stats, and Dax Holyfield, remember him? Hot recruit, South Carolina and Clemson, mostly from South Carolina side of things until the Gamecocks backed off. Remember when the insiders were saying his shoulder was in such a mess that they didn't think he was going to be able to play, et cetera, et cetera. Went on, of course, playing the Shrine Bowl. He's played in 8 games this year at Virginia Tech. Got 35 tackles. Made his first career start last week.
Seen him on the field, man. He's
number
all
4.
over the place.
Number 4 is a baller. Kid's a baller. I think South Carolina, if they could have gotten him, not saying they would have, I think they made a mistake.
They like Rosendo.
Oh,
Lewis.
no. Remember, we surmised that he was the guy that South Carolina had to stop recruiting.
From that recruiting violation that took place, remember the thing that Bobby Bentley got having that illegal workout or whatever?
You think that was him?
Violation?
I think it was. It could. It can't be anybody but that situation.
They were talking about a school in North Carolina, right?
Yeah. A lot of schools in North Carolina that they recruit. That's never been addressed in this particular case that I have seen.
You'll never know the actual
you may be right.
They'll never say it.
Well, typically the insiders get that stuff. But I'm just pointing this out because when South Carolina moved on him, the word was because his shoulder was so bad. Remember we asked his dad about it at the Shrine Bowl, and he said, "Are you kidding me? This kid's made more tackles than anybody in the country. He hadn't missed a game, played in 60-something games in high school. His shoulder's fine." I mean, he dinged it up in the summer, I think, when he was lifting, but it's fine. Anyway, I just was checking on that and thought that was, at least from where I sit, I thought it was interesting. USC announced today next season's season ticket price will be the same as this year, $415.
Even with Alabama, Florida, and Clemson on the schedule.
Citadel will stick with the starting quarterback from last week, Brandon Rainey. The players who were suspended will be back. Jeff Hartzell reporting this today in the Post and Courier. The 5 players, Jordan Black, the quarterback, fullback Lorenzo Ward, fullback Brennan Berry, slot back Keontae Sessions, cornerback Kafari Buffalo will all be back this week after missing last week for a violation of team rules. We forgot to mention this last night, but Limestone did decide to stick with the assistant coach, the former USC assistant Brian Turk. Is going to be the head coach now for the Saints moving forward. They went through their season without a win this year, so they decided not to look outside and stay inside the program.
I don't mean to be flippant, but he can't do any worse.
No, he can't. He can only go up. Exactly. And the South Carolina Football Hall of Fame announced their finalists for the Blanchard Rogers Trophy, which goes to the Player of the Year in South Carolina. I'll just run them down very quickly. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Jake Bentley, Raheem Bingham, who plays at Arkansas State, Noah Dawkins, the Citadel, Travis Etienne, Cleveland Farrell, Jeffrey Gunner at Coastal, Jamarcus Henderson at Newberry, Ricky Holmes at Benedict, Adrian Hope at Furman, Anthony Johnson of Rock Hill, who's at Buffalo, Javon Kinlaw, Christian Miller, Sedarius Rookard, who's at Troy, Debo Samuel, Josh Simmons, Limestone, Andre Stoddard, Wofford, Rogan Wells, Valdosta State, Shy Wirtz of Georgia Southern, and Christian Wilkins. Who do you think wins? There's no Trevor Lawrence. Who do you think wins?
Etienne.
Christian Wilkins?
Etienne. What I said.
Jake Bentley?
I said ETN.
Cleveland Farrell?
I said Travis Etienne.
Hey, do you think that Clemson will?
Sometimes I think you need your ears checked.
If Clemson goes ahead and wins the ACC championship, does Kelly Bryant get a ring?
Wouldn't you have the team?
That will be a poll question. That will be a future poll question.
You can give him a third of a ring because he played a third of the season.
They gave rings to other guys who left.
Yeah, you have the team vote on that, don't you?
I don't know.
I think you might have a lot of people who might not want him to get one.
A guy who got a lot of notoriety last week because of the great catch he made, Brian Edwards, USC receiver, the one-handed around-the-back catch that he made at Ole Miss. Talking with him earlier this week, he talked about making that catch.
I watched it a couple times. A lot of people just social media kind of buzzing about it and stuff like that. So, I watched it a good amount.
How'd you do it?
I don't know. It's one of those things, it's in the moment. We practice the catch. The one-handed catch we be back every day, so it kind of just routine.
Do you guys practice one-handed catches in situations like that?
Every morning we go through catching drills. We practice catching with the right hand and left hand and two hands, all that good stuff.
What was the hardest part of the catch? Actually controlling it, or staying in bounds, or can you recall what you were thinking as you were going through the process?
Everything happened so fast. You can't really recall what part of the catch was hard or what part of the catch. It all just happened so fast, and I'm just glad I made the play, honestly.
Is that the best spot to be in? Is when you're not thinking about it, when you're just reacting to it?
Yeah, I mean, when you practice something over and over again, it just becomes second nature. So you're not really thinking about it. It just kind of happens, and it's smooth and it's fluent. So I think that's the best way it's supposed to be.
You have experienced this season as much as anybody I can remember the fickleness of fans. You had the drops, and you heard about that. Now you've got the catch, and you hear about that. How weird an experience has that been, internally and externally, that roller coaster?
Honestly, it's really taught me a lesson. It's just eliminate the clutter, control what you can control. You don't go out there thinking, I'm going to catch one-handed passes or I'm going to drop, easy touchdowns. Just focus on what you can control, eliminate the outside clutter. I kind of try to stay off social media during game week and things like that, just to narrow my focus to game day and what I need to do. So, as long as you eliminate the clutter and focus on what you need to focus on, all the outside noise.
And that's something that you have learned this season and started to enact this season. You think it got to you worse in the past?
In the past, I really didn't deal with a lot of drops and a lot of, just things like that. So I really didn't face a lot of it. But, when it happened, I kind of just learned to do those things. And it just, it's helped me play a lot better.
We had one notable Twitter interaction this week. I mean, it felt like a positive way, even before the one-handed catch. It felt like that you had kind of found a positive way to handle that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't take everything you see to heart. I mean, you got to learn to laugh at yourself sometimes.
What's it mean to this offense to win a shootout with a high-powered offense where people said there's no way you can win a shootout?
It just gives us confidence, to keep doing what we're doing. Obviously we thought we could score. We had confidence in the game plan, and we went out and executed it. And I'm just happy that we won.
We've been asking questions for the last month about what maybe Jake needs to do better. Do you think he's past all that? And is he the Jake that you guys know and want on this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's always been, a couple poor decisions here and there, but, it's football. It happens, I think he's back to being himself. He's back to making those plays. And, I think we're going to be all right. He's going to be all right, too.
All right, Brian Edwards having a great year. Will he be back for his senior year? Will Jake Bentley be back for his senior year?
I think Jake will be back.
Got some decisions to make here coming up real soon. And that will certainly impact what the Gamecock team will look like come next year.
I think Edwards could be served also for another year.
I would think so. But you know what? That money, you think about it, hard to turn it down sometimes. All right, back in a moment. We are back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, here on a very busy Thursday night. Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, Professor Tom Hayes at your service. Brian Leonard, once again, behind the bulletproof glass. 1 week from tonight, big events up at the Events at Manchester in Rock Hill, and we are so proud and honored as a show and as individuals to be a part of all of this. The Ultimate Tailgate Party, benefiting the Rock Hill Rotary Foundation projects, going to bring together Gamecocks and Tigers for a night of fun and frivolity, as you might expect with the game being right around the corner. Joining us, Mike Taylor from the Rock Hill Rotary Club to tell us more about what to look forward to next week up in Rock Hill. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great, Phil. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for agreeing to help us MC the event next week.
You got it. It's our pleasure, and it looks like you guys have got a tremendous program planned.
We do. We have a great, I'll just call them a cast of characters. We got Coach Ford, Ellis Johnson will be here, George Rogers will be here, Jim Stuckey, Rick Sanford, Donnell Wooford, Gerald Dixon Sr., Lamerick Simpson, J.D. Fuller, Carl the Thrill Hill, Landon Ard, Rod Byers, and hopefully we'll have even several more. Hopefully Torrey Gurley's going to be able to make it, and Coach Jimmy Wallace, the famous Northwestern coach, will be there, and depending on the playoff preparations, we're hoping Fred Herron, Bubba Pittman, and Coach Martin from Northwestern will be able to join us.
Wow, that's some lineup, and I imagine that the whole idea here having all these folks together is have a little bit of fun with one another, picking at each other about the rivalry and talking about their experiences both on the sideline and on the playing field. These folks will have some great stories to tell.
Absolutely. We had Coach Ford and George 2 years ago, and it was really neat to see how they kind of ham and egged each other and got into the crowd and really got the crowd going when it came time for the live auction. So having those two back, along with Ellis and Stuckey and our own Mr. Football, Rick Sanford, and some others, it should be just a great night.
And tell everybody about where it's going to be, and for folks who want to come out and participate, take it all in. You're going to have a live auction, going to have a raffle, and going to have great food. Tell us where, tell us when, tell us how.
Okay, so it's going to be held at the Events at Manchester, which is right off of Dave Lyle Boulevard in Rock Hill. It'll be next Thursday, the 15th of November, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. I think you'll be running at least the first hour of the show there, so we look forward to having that. Three great causes that we're raising money for: Honduras Water Project, the Rock Hill Police Department in their Worthy Boys and Girls Camp, and with this being the centennial celebration for the Rock Hill Rotary, we're hoping to raise enough funds to present the City of Rock Hill with a Rotarian clock. So it should be a great night. I think we have close to 275 tickets sold right now. Got room for up to 400. So anybody that would like to come up and see and just listen to a roundtable with Coach Ford, Johnson, and George will be here with his Heisman. And you got a two-time Super Bowl winner with Jim Stuckey from Columbia and Sanford. It's just going to be a great night.
Yeah, we are so much looking forward to it. And I tell you, this is great because, over the years we've had these events around the state, and we've been privileged to participate in a lot of them. Some are still happening. Some have gone away. It's good to see that you guys have kickstarted another one here, and just another way to have a little bit of fun leading up to what I think is the greatest rivalry in college football. But, of course, I am a little bit biased about that.
Well, I agree with you. And being in Rock Hill, Football City, USA, hopefully we're going to have even more of our former athletes from the three high schools there celebrating with us. This will be the fourth year we've had this, and this is probably the biggest cast that we've had to date. So just looking forward to a great night. Everybody having a good time. It's neat to see these former players that have developed these really good friendships. They kind of put the Carolina Clemson off to the side and just really enjoyed being around each other. So it's just going to be a great night.
Yeah, and they really enjoy it, don't they? I mean, yeah, there's they can get on each other's nerves a little bit because of the intensity of the rivalry, but then again, they walk away smiling and slapping each other on the back and having a good time.
Oh, that absolutely. It's just really kind of heartwarming to see the friendships that they've made after spending time fighting against each other on the gridiron. So, again, it's just a great, it should be a great night to see all these wonderful players and coaches back. And if you've not heard Coach Ford and George Rogers go at it, that's worth the price of admission right there.
Yeah.
Those two are just incredible.
Indeed, they are. They'll have a lot of fun with each other. I know one thing that'll come up, because I've heard George say this a million times. Yes, he'll say, I never scored a touchdown in Death Valley, but he said, I got a lot of yards between the goal lines.
That's correct.
You cannot hold him down. Listen, Mike, thank you so much. We look forward to being up there. We'll talk to you guys next week, and just thanks for thinking of us here at Sports Talk and letting us be a part of it.
Well, Phil, thanks a lot. And real quickly, if anybody wants tickets, you can call 704-351-1487 or send an email to rockhillrotaryclub.tix.com for information on that. And we look forward to seeing you next Thursday. And thanks again for agreeing to help us out.
You got it, man. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mike Taylor, Rock Hill Rotary Club. We'll be talking more about this next week. It's going to be a blast. You're going to be up there too.
Mm-hmm.
And don't sound too excited about it now.
I'm very
You
excited.
Okay? Hold the excitement level
very
down.
Excited.
Okay.
I want to see George. I haven't seen George.
You never met George?
I've never met George yet.
And we'll introduce you to
Mr.
George.
Ford. And Mr. Ford. It's time to do a little high school stuff.
Nobody calls him Mr. Ford. Just telling you. Even though the guy, he's a hemp farmer.
Yes.
What can you do? What can you do with hemp? What's that used for?
Healing properties.
Mm-hmm.
It's the oil and the hemp.
Mm-hmm.
CBD oil.
Can you do anything else with it?
Without
you can't get high from
it
hemp.
Doesn't have the high.
It doesn't have. It's basically marijuana without THC.
Somebody tell Danny that then.
It's marijuana, but it's got healing properties.
Danny's got the chewing tobacco. He doesn't need that.
Sports Talk High School Report is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. With fave rates from Farm Bureau Insurance, you can get all your favorite things like competitive rates, local agents, and great claim service. Don't start now. For all your auto, home, and life insurance needs, get a no-obligation quote today at favorites.com.
All right, let's take a look at some of the statistical leaders around the state as compiled by Max Preps. Tyrell Jackson out of Wren is the state's leading passer at 3,275 yards, 38 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. That's Kelly Bryant's old high school. Kelly Bryant, as a senior, was like a 4,000-yard passer. Coach Jeff Tate, man, that offense he runs up there is pretty dynamic. Hunter Helms out of Gray Collegiate, a junior, at 2,657 yards, 21 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. Gabe Carroll at Clover, 2,580 yards passing, 11 touchdowns, and he has, 20 touchdowns. My bad, 11 interceptions. 20 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. And Gunnar Neistat, quarterback at Porter Gowd, is at 2,395 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Those are your leading passers in the state. Let's check out the top rushers. I know Michael Dukes, who we talked about earlier in recruiting, certainly going to be one of the top running backs in the states once I get the stats to load. And they're being slower than some of these runners at loading here. There we go. Leading rusher in the state is Braden Bennett, the son of
Brandon.
Over the top. 1,653 yards, 22 touchdowns. Jack Alvarez from Greenwood Christian, 1,643 yards, 21 touchdowns. Here's Michael Duke, 1,638 yards, 27 touchdowns. Nick Cunningham of Ashley Ridge, 1,527 yards and 15 touchdowns. Some of your statistical leaders in the state as we hit the playoffs for everybody. In fact, there's a game tonight. I believe Greenwood and Dorman playing their 5A playoff game tonight. When we come back, it's the Money Coach here on Sports Talk.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
This space for sale, usually it is reserved for the money coach Fran Halloran, but he seems otherwise occupied at the moment. So we will press on.
We'll update some high school football because we do have some playoff games going on tonight, including that Dorman and Northwestern game. What do you have there, Pro? You've been looking at it?
No, if you're saying Dorman and Northwestern, I don't have that score.
I'm sorry, Dorman and Greenwood.
Yeah, it's 14-0. Dorman over Greenwood.
Let's see. York is up on Orangeburg-Wilkinson 14-3. Why are so many games being – are they expecting bad rain in the state tomorrow? They've been expecting rain all week, and it's been beautiful for the most part. Had a little bit of rain, but not much.
They're very much concerned about the gates again, apparently.
The Lexington High School game at Carolina Forest has been moved to Coastal Carolina.
Whoa.
Ian Guerin reporting that from down the beach area. I guess that's something. I guess they're playing tomorrow night. I hope they just didn't move it tonight.
York is up 14-3.
I just said that.
Okay.
Should listen to the show sometime.
I do listen to the show.
You'd enjoy it.
I'm trying to scroll here.
Indian Land.
Northwestern leads Boiling Springs 7-6.
Indian Land 6, Crescent nothing.
Jerk.
Why don't you repeat that one?
Northwestern leading
Boiling Indian Land. Indian Land 6, Crescent nothing.
No.
Oh, here we go. From Ian Guerin, after a day of discussions, Friday's Lexington Carolina Forest game has been moved to Brooks Stadium.
Interesting.
So maybe they just need more room.
Did it need a waiver for that?
I don't know. But
apparently.
Let's see if anything else popped up here. Okay. That's all we got. So no money coach. So we move forward here the last few minutes of the broadcast. So South Carolina and Florida. We talked a lot about Clemson, Boston College. South Carolina, Florida. Ideal situation for the Gamecocks in that.
I don't know if it's ideal.
Well, the Florida quarterback situation, as soon as Felipe Franks makes a mistake, if he does, I mean, the people are going to rain down upon him. Would they go to the freshman quarterback who they haven't used a whole lot this year?
Here's my situation when it comes to Felipe Franks. I almost feel like South Carolina's atrophy in the secondary almost neutralizes what Felipe Franks brings to the table. I think you have a shaky quarterback against a shaky secondary. I think people are forgetting it's not like South Carolina's defense played all that well last week against Ole Miss. They didn't really play that well against Tennessee for the first 3 quarters. Again, they both played 2 very awesome fourth quarters because they switched to man defense. I want to see whether or not Will Muschamp has the faith in his defense to be able to go to a man defense, because I don't know if they'll be able to score on Florida's defense the way that they scored on Ole Miss's defense.
I think you're going to see a very conservative game plan from South Carolina because of the fact that their secondary is so beat up. They're going to try and control football, see if they can get their running game going big, seeing how teams have moved the ball against Florida the last 2 games. Try and limit as much as possible Felipe Franks and his ability to throw the deep pass. And you know who really scares me is the Tony kid at wide receiver.
Yeah.
He's very dangerous if you get him the ball in a jet sweep or short pass. He's one of those guys that can make moves and make a big play happen. Their running backs are dangerous. They can make big plays as well. I think South Carolina will come out and try and run the football, try to keep Jake Bentley in the 20 pass neighborhood with a high completion percentage and no turnovers, and see if they can just man up and beat them with the ground game. See if they can get A.J. Turner. I don't know how much they'll get out of Rico Dowdle, Tyson Williams and Mon Denson.
Yeah.
Don't forget Mon Denson.
Tyson Williams with that. I never like to see a running back with any type of cast.
Well, they're going to cut it off.
On their
they're
hand.
Going to cut it off. Muschamp
cut his hand off.
The hand and the cast.
No.
Yeah, hopefully they won't go out together.
But, the other thing I would like to see, and I know they'd like to use it as an element of surprise, but a quarterback like Franks, I love to have exotic blitzes because a guy like that, you rather him make a quick decision than one where he stands back there and is able to make a decision. It's almost something like, he may panic, throw a pick or whatever. But I think when you're passive on your rush and just try to keep everything in front of you, I think guys get a chance to pick you apart. I really do.
My whole thing is that I just look at this and I think South Carolina has such momentum right now. And I know that because of the fact that they have these 2 consecutive wins, I don't want fans to think that just because you don't win this game, it means that the situation in the season is lost. You're going to go at least 500 in the conference, basically, with your record. Whether if you lose, you'll be right at 500. If you win, you're over 500. This season is, I would say, progress in the positive. I just don't know if folks will look at it like that if there's a loss to Florida.
Update a few more high school scores. There are a lot of games tonight. I guess there must be weather coming across the state tomorrow. Daniel is leading Eastside 28-6. Tyler Venables, according to Todd Summers of News Channel 7, has 4 touchdowns rushing. That's Brent's other son. Also, you have Dorman now leading Greenwood 21-0. That's just in the first quarter. And Whitmire, still a Whitmire fan? Whitmire up on Estill 6-0 into the first quarter. Why are you down on Whitmire all of a sudden?
I told you they rejected me.
Isn't Estill also the Gators?
I think they are.
Yeah,
I think they are the Gators.
I told you I'm all about 96 right now. Go Wildcats.
Find yourself a place to live, will you? You know.
So
tomorrow night on Sports Talk, final thoughts, getting you ready for the really big games involving South Carolina and Clemson, both on the road. Last trips of the season out of state. South Carolina back home, 3 games to go, back home for UT Chattanooga, then up to Clemson, then back home for they zip it up in the regular season.
With the Zips.
One
note just on the Boston College front, and this is something I talked about with their radio voice, John Metter-Perrell, in part of what will be on Opposition Research tomorrow. Steve Adazio's contract over at Boston College is up at 2020. So he got an extension a couple of years back till 2020. You have to think he is getting an extension off of this year because he's had 7-win teams 5 out of the 6 seasons, including this one that he's been up there. He already's at 7. You have to think they're going to get at least 8, maybe 9, depending on whether or not they win this particular game. But from the standpoint of where he sits, this could be the season that gives him his big payday.
Well, if he's got a good agent, he's ATMing some kind of way with some of these jobs opening up. Say, well, my guy's looking at this one. I still would prefer to see, and I know maybe he's desperate to coach, but if I'm Les Miles, I had such a good career. Do I want to go to Kansas? I mean,
you see, he's looking at Kansas.
Snowed in Kansas today. Other games involving state teams coming up this weekend. Arkansas State at Coastal. Coastal still needing one more win. Get bowl eligible. South Carolina State at Florida A&M. Furman trying to stay hot. Goes to VMI. Should win that game. It's Sanford at the Citadel. That'd be a tough one for the Citadel. Wofford at Western Carolina. Gardner-Webb goes to Charleston Southern. Campbell to Presbyterian. Newberry closes out the season at Mars Hill, trying to get that 6th win and have another winning season. And Benedict is finished. They had a good year, Benedict. Only lost 3 times. Looks like they had 6 wins. 6-3. North Greenville at North Alabama, trying to snap a 3-game losing streak. Allen will play Virginia Lynchburg at home. And, of course, Limestone finished with a perfect record if 0-10 is considered. Maybe it's imperfect.
Yeah, it's very much imperfect.
What did it do for the #1 draft?
And don't forget, you got South Carolina and Clemson playing on the 24th.
My parents will be at that game, by the way.
Oh, good. Can't wait for you to see them. Coastal Carolina at South Alabama the same day. Then on the 29th, a Thursday, Charleston Southern will be at the Citadel. We have a Thursday night game.
Makeup game from that.
And then South Carolina, Akron, and then probably Clemson in the ACC Championship game on December 1st.
Got to see if Mr. Capaccio can get us into that beer garden for that Thursday night game.
We can make that happen. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.